Hi, this is Sid Walker. Welcome. I am an expert on overcoming call reluctance, sales call reluctance, they call it. I have an Amazon bestseller titled How I Conquered Call Reluctance. It's actually a longer title, but that's that's the short version. How I Conquered Call Reluctance. I've also got an internet course. I'm the only guy with one of those called Fearless Prospecting Mindset. And I'll tell you right now how to get those. I've made a lot of my cutting edge material free, which is good news for everybody. And the easiest way to get all this is I have a free school. It's called Fearless Prospecting Group. And the link to get there the quickest is a Skool, Skool, so you can get there that way. And of course the links are below here as well. But I'll give you the quickest way to get my free stuff is go to fearlessprospecting.net, fearlessprospecting.net, and then sign up for the school. There's a couple questions, who you are, what you're promoting, and that kind of stuff. And then on step 2 of the school, there is a just click on it. It says free stuff. Just click on that, and then there'll be 30 free pages of my best-selling book, and then there's also one of my favorite things on action quotes from, there's 40 action quotes that I like. So download those free things, and then also once you get signed up for school, I do a 15-minute free appointment with people. It's not a sales call. It's just got to find out where you are, what's in the way, and help you get the right resources and the right focus as fast as possible. So I call it kind of a quick start strategy call. All right, so be sure to sign up for that as well. All right, and again, all that information is below there in the links. So our topic today is that the ego hates risk. Okay, and I'll tell you what the ego is too. In terms of most people, that's not a word they're real familiar with. In terms of there's the scientific definition, which I've never found of any use, and then there's the more spiritual definition, which is the one I use. So I'll give you that here. So the essence of what we're doing here is we're trying to learn how the ego works and how it stops us from taking any risks. That's the biggest problem when it comes to overcoming call reluctance. And what I'll tell you here, I'm going to give you the short version today because we don't have a lot of time, but this is one of the biggest things you can learn to do. One of the biggest skills you can learn to develop is to learn what your ego sounds like and how to get around it. Don't let it stop you. All right. So, bottom line, what I'm going to tell you today could have a bigger impact on your career than anything else you're ever going to hear. You're going to hear. All right, so let's talk about the ego. I'm going to give you a bunch of key insights from lots of research. I've been a coach for 40 years. Been studying this my whole life, basically my whole adult life. Still am. There's always more to learn. And so I'm not going to give you a lot of explanation. Just going to give you the essence. So just listen carefully and you'll get it. So like I said, most people don't have a clue how their ego works. They don't even know they have one. I mean, everybody's heard of the ego. The typical definition or the awareness is that, your ego is a sense of self-esteem or self-worth. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good stuff. Now, obviously it can be overdone, but still that's generally a positive thing. The problem is the other 99% of the ego is all negative. Okay, it's the source of all negativity. How's that for a nasty piece of work? Okay, most people don't know that. Like with call reluctance, people think there's something wrong with them. There's not. In most cases, which the problem is you're listening to a part of your brain that is afraid of its own shadow. Okay, all of you is not afraid. Part of you is, and if you're listening to that part, you can't pick up the phone. I dealt with that for decades. All right, so. Bottom line, your ego is a self-sabotage machine. Okay, so that's why you need to learn how it works. And it never sleeps, it never quits. It's brilliant at what it does, and has endless energy, and it'll be around for the rest of your life. So The better, the faster you learn how to deal with that part of your brain, the better. I mean, it's life-changing, literally, folks. All right. The basic belief of the ego is, and most people, is that we've been left alone on a dangerous planet and we need to learn how to survive. Okay. Now, none of that's really true, but that's what most people believe on some level. That's what we've been taught to believe. That's what makes logical sense. Your ego loves logic. Your ego and your intellect are best friends because your ego likes to use your intellect to come up with logical reasons to not do anything. Okay. Let's figure this out. Let's do this tomorrow. Whatever. I mean, your ego's it hates risk, it hates change, it hates the unknown, it hates rejection, it hates being wrong, it hates being embarrassed. I mean, the list is pretty endless, really. But the most important part is it hates rejection and it hates risk. And of course, that means it hates everything about prospecting. Okay. So your ego's never going to want to prospect. And the other thing is your ego only sees straight ahead. All right. That's an interesting thing because what happens is your ego sets a goal or it's constantly judging and evaluating how things are supposed to be happening. I don't think I said this, but your ego thinks it's in charge of your survival. Okay. It's really not, but that's what it thinks. So it's looking straight ahead. If you set a goal or you start a project of any kind and everything isn't happening according to the logical sequence that your ego thinks you should be doing, it starts to judge and evaluate everything. Okay. It'll tell you you're doing it wrong. It'll tell you everything that everybody else is doing wrong. It's a machine gun. Anything you try to do out of your comfort zone, it gets the machine gun out and just wreaks havoc with negative thoughts. And that's a problem. Okay. So, because pretty much if you are getting ready to make phone calls, prospecting phone calls, or just prospecting in general, maybe walk in and see somebody, any kind of prospecting, if you judge and you listen to the negative judgments, you're going to do something else. It all happens in seconds. I've dealt with it my whole career. I've broken through. I'm really good at dealing with it now, but I wasn't for a long time. And I've coached thousands of people on how to break through. So you get the idea. When I say your ego only sees straight ahead, and if everything's not working, it panics. Okay. It's like I work with a bunch of real estate people. That's more recent. I've been expertise. My main focus has been on financial advisors most of my career. But when I started to focus on just call reluctance here about 5 years ago, I've ended up with a lot of real estate people, and they all think the same thing. It's like worse than most cultures. They think that if everyone doesn't love me and everyone's not saying yes, I'm doing something wrong. Okay, that's insane, folks. That's never going to happen. Okay, your ego is insane. Most people don't even know that. The part of your brain you're listening to most of the time that you think is making logical sense is insane. Okay. Now, it works some of the time, for sure. If it didn't work at all, nobody would do it. Nobody'd pay any attention. So that's the brilliant part about the ego is it works about 10% of the time. That's not very good. Not very good numbers. So 3 big guns that the ego uses to stop us, slow us down. One is it makes you feel guilty about what you didn't or didn't do in the past, what you did or didn't do. It makes negative movies of the future in order to scare you into fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, you name it. Tons of negative emotions in there. And then the basic thing it's doing is distracting us. It's distracting us from our authentic self. It's distracting us from intuition. Your ego hates intuition. It wants to be in control. It wants to be in charge. It thinks it's in charge of your survival. And basically, your ego thinks your intuition are errant thoughts from an unknown source. Okay, we've been trained to literally ignore the smartest part of our brain by thousands. That's your intuition. Okay, most people see it in sports. You can't play sports analytically. It's too slow. I was a good hockey player as a kid, right up in through my mid-20s. I mean, if you think in that game, you're going to get killed. You've got to stay in the flow of the game, which is all intuitive. It's the same in business. But when you add money, it makes everybody really careful, and then that hooks your ego starts to go, we can't take any risks. And then let's do logical things. Let's figure it out, and let's try to get everything perfect before we do anything. And you're basically not doing anything at that point, because perfect never happens. So you're getting the idea. This is a major force you're dealing with, and this has been going on for thousands of years. There's nothing new about any of this. That's why I call this the spiritual definition of the ego, not the medical one. It's way too complicated. It's useless as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, even if I were a doctor, I don't think I would. If I were a psychiatrist, I don't even think it would help you that much. But simply, certainly the spiritual version is there's two voices in your head. One's the Holy Spirit, which you access through your intuition. The other one's your ego, which is called the separated self or the false self, and that's the source of all negativity. So you've got your ego, which is the source of all negativity, combined with your intellect, which is the slowest, dumbest part of the brain. And that's what most people are listening to, is those two things, the ego and the intellect. What could go wrong? A lot. A lot's going to go wrong. Plus, you're going to have call reluctance. Okay. All right. Let me see where I am here. So my definition of the ego is your ego wants to be rich with no effort, no risk, no rejection, and constantly entertained. Okay, your ego wants money. It wants money for more power. It wants money to spend on entertainment, having fun, coasting, but it doesn't want to do anything to get it. Your ego wants to coast, so we've got a part of the brain. That's why it's a self-sabotage machine. It doesn't want to do anything that's a risk or could create any kind of conflict or, put you in an unknown situation. Oh my God. Like picking up the phone and talking to a stranger. It's really not physically dangerous to make phone calls, but your ego will make you think it is. Okay, the fear feels real, no question about that. All right, so let me give you a few examples of what it's like when you're getting ready to get on the phone. These are the kinds of things your ego is going to say to you, and you just think this is you. It's not. It's a piece of software in your brain that's brilliant at keeping you from doing anything. We can make these calls tomorrow. It never seems like the right time to call. I don't have time to prospect today. I don't know what to say to this person. Prospecting takes too much time. See, these are all logical things. They're all logical reasons not to do it. I don't want to hear another no today. That's a little more emotional. For creative people, that's me. There has to be an easier way. There really isn't, but you're hoping. And for the experienced people, which is also me here, I've paid my dues. I shouldn't have to make these calls. Okay, there's lots of these. I'll give you some more before we're done here. So these are judgments coming from your ego. They're not coming from you. They're all programmed in your head. They're automatic responses. Your ego wants to keep everything the way it is. It hates change, even making more money. That's why there's support groups for lottery winners. Making all of a sudden having a whole bunch of money is a big change. It drives people nuts. They panic. Oh my God, I could lose it all. Some do. So anyway, that's another whole seminar. So like I said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just listening to a part of your brain that you need to ignore. Okay, because there's nothing good that's going to happen from that. And so that's the big thing. You need to learn how to ignore the thoughts coming from your ego. You need to know how it works, what it says, and then learn to ignore those thoughts. The easiest way to say it is ignore all negative thoughts. Total waste of time. Okay, I wish I would have known that about 30 years ago or even before. I'm 74. I've spent my whole life trying to figure this stuff out. Which is an interesting way to say it, because I guess I figured out how to stop figuring it out and just trust my instincts and follow my intuition. It works way better. So step one, as I'm saying, become aware of how the ego works, what it says, and then learn to ignore the negative thoughts. Step two, you've got to learn to reprogram how you think about prospecting in particular. That's our focus here today. You've got to limit your beliefs. You've got limiting beliefs about prospecting you need to ignore and change, actually. I just did a program on warm-ups. It's the one, it should be the one just before this one on YouTube there. So anyway, watch that one. So I'm not going to do anything on warm-ups today. Those are like one-liners that will help you reprogram your brain away from your fears, doubts, and worries about prospecting. So I'm going to skip that one because I did a good job on that last time. So be sure to watch that one. It's just called warm-ups. And so learning not to be distracted by your ego, distraction is really, like I said, there's a number of things it does, but it's all really trying to distract you. I love sports. I've always been a big sports guy. I probably love watching football the most. And you can see the ego at work. It's so obvious. I mean, it's really, you can see it in any sport, but you especially see it in football because you've got a quarterback that throws a perfect pass that you and I could catch. and then you've got a receiver. They're paying millions of dollars a year to play a game for a few months. And the ball's getting ready. He's getting ready to catch it. Everything looks good. And then the last second, he looks away to see who's going to hit him or who's around because they're going to try to break his arm. Okay. And so, or that may have happened already to that guy. So there's some fear there. And of course, he looks away from the ball. And then the ball hits him in the helmet or his chest and he drops the ball. He doesn't catch it. Most people can't catch the ball without looking it into their hands. If you're looking to see where you're going to run or who's next, who's getting ready to hit you, you're probably going to drop the ball or just not catch it at all. Okay. I mean, certainly some people can luck out and catch it and not look, but that doesn't happen very often. I just watched a game last Sunday with one of my favorite quarterbacks. I mean, the guy just throws amazing passes. Nobody was catching any of his balls. They're dropping them all. And so they lose. It's amazing. And every time you turn on a football game, you can watch it happen. Somebody's going to do it every game. They're going to drop the ball because they're looking to see who's going to hit them or where they're going to run. These people are making millions of dollars a year just to catch a ball. You would think that they would know better, but still, that's the point is that your ego is incredibly powerful. Okay, those guys practice all the time to catch that ball, and still the ego jumps in there and makes them drop it or miss it. All right, so let me give you a couple more things that, let's say you're getting ready to make calls, and your ego is going to jump in there with things like, all of a sudden, you decide you need to take care of a client who's just called in with a request, or you've got to get a birthday present. I just did that. I just ordered a Christmas present for somebody, for your spouse or your daughter or somebody important in your life. And there's a webinar you need to watch. All right. You decide to fix something that's broken in your office. Those drive me nuts. I'm very auditory. I can't stand things that make noise that aren't supposed to. All right. And then you have the thought that you should get more organized before you make calls, clean your office, put everything away, do more research. I talk people out of that all the time. Quit doing research. You do research after somebody says yes, not before. Certainly sometimes it's appropriate to do some research, but most of the time it's better to make more calls because the part that actually gets a yes on the phone call has nothing to do with research. When you make a prospecting phone call, your first goal is to get people to say, "Tell me more," in as few words as possible. I mean, literally 10 or 15 words. You want people to say, "Tell me more." Okay. It isn't about explaining everything you do. That's you're putting people to sleep if you're doing that. I have people with all these scripts. I just say, throw away the scripts. You can script the first 10 words, 15 words. After that, you should be using a checklist and being intuitive. All of a sudden, you notice you're hungry. That happens a lot. Let's have an early lunch. Or, let's take the car to the car wash. It's early. No one will be there. And then we can have an early lunch. Okay. All makes total sense. Let's do that. We'll save a bunch of time going early to the car wash and getting an early lunch. Because your ego is just totally logical. It's going to come up with reasons that just sound really good to not take any risks. Okay. Do not dial that phone. All right. So you get the idea. This is a powerful part of your brain. Most people don't even know it's there. They think there's something wrong with them and there's not. Or they just think, they just can't do certain things. Well, that's really not true. That's why this is a huge skill to learn. I mean, I tell people tell me, or my clients tell me all the time that, learning to overcome your call reluctance has changed their whole life, because when you learn how to do that, you do everything better in your life, because you learn how to overcome fear and trust your intuition. Those are the two biggest skills you can learn. Ignore negative thoughts. Act on your intuition as if your life depended on it. Smartest part of your brain by thousands. Okay, your ego basically makes everybody think. Everybody's got an ego. It's not going away. And your ego hates your intuition. It basically is trying to convince you that your intuition are errant thoughts from an unknown source. Why would you trust that? Okay. Your ego is an idiot compared to your intuition, but it doesn't want you to know that. Your ego is hoping things work. It is a tiny little database. Most of it is misperception. And that's the part we think knows what it's doing. That's an unfortunate situation for all of us. You need to learn to ignore that ego as fast as you can, which is basically ignore negative thoughts. And some people just say, "Wow, that's overwhelming," because once they start to do it, they realize they have thousands a day. All right. So, bottom line: learn to ignore your ego. Otherwise, your ego wins, you lose, because you're not going to take any risk. You're not going to take any action. You're not going to pick up the phone, and that's going to cost you money. I think I told you, I think earlier, I don't know if I said that on this call, but I put off dealing with my own car reluctance for 20 years. Conservatively, that cost me $5 million. At 74, I'd like to have that money. Okay, it's a big amount. All right, so how do you stop the madness? How do you put out the fire? I call it the lost opportunity money incinerator. You're throwing thousands, tens of thousands of dollars into that money incinerator every day that you're avoiding making prospecting calls. That's most people are in denial about how much money it's costing them to have call reluctance. So anyway, you've got all the resources you need to break through. I'm the top guy on the planet on this stuff. I'm very cutting edge. My Skool. My $800 program, my $800 course is now free on the Skool. So sign up. It's 5.5 hours. Powerful stuff. I'm a peak performance coach, so it's going to work with all kinds of things, not just call reluctance. And then get the free download. That's step 2 when you sign up for the Skool. It says free stuff there. Be sure to scroll down a little bit and get the PDFs of 30 pages of my book and my favorite action quotes, and then sign up for the 15-minute quick start strategy call, whenever you're ready to do that. And, that's not a sales call. It's just help me find out a little bit more what you're up against and give you the best resources and the best focus on how to get over that, because everybody's a little different. Call reluctance is way more complicated than most people realize. A lot more moving parts. All right. That's it for the day. Thanks for joining us and listening in, and we'll do this again soon. All right, see you. There we go.